everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to wait just a couple minutes for people to join in on the Zoom. And I know that some people are watching on YouTube, so hello, YouTube friends as well. Yeah, so let me just give people a couple more minutes to join us. And just some nuts and bolts reminders. We do have a Q&A box here for people to ask questions at any time. We'll be taking a look at those and answering at the very end. We'll have a nice Q&A session. So don't worry if we're not typing back to you right away. We are going to answer your questions, but go ahead and ask them as they come so that we can consolidate some of the common ones and make sure that the most number of questions get answered. Yeah, let me just see. Okay. Well, hello, welcome everyone to Initial View Tuesday Talks. We're so excited that we get to engage and meet you in this format. And I'm really grateful for my colleagues here at these 4 wonderful liberal arts institutions and for their time today to get to share a little bit about what it means to be at a liberal arts college, what benefits there are from being there, but mostly we just want to answer your questions and we want to be here for you in this new time of uncertainty, but also hopefulness. And so without further ado, I'm going to have my colleagues introduce themselves. So go right ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tina Elfenbein. I'm an associate director here at Grinnell College in Grinnell, Iowa. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to Initial View for hosting. Grinnell College is it's a super small liberal arts college in a really small town. So Grinnell, Iowa is a tiny rural community and it's about 9,000 people who live here. And the longer I've been here for about 10 years now, and I moved here from New York City, the more I love the opportunity to live in a place where community means something totally different. We have the time and the space to really get to know each other and to take care of each other. That's true on campus, but it's true in the wider community as well. And I think it's something that our students really, really relish about the opportunity to study here. Can I have the next slide, please? But in terms of the sort of academic experience of Grinnell and how we distinguish ourselves from our really amazing liberal arts college peers is really our curriculum, which is an open curriculum, which means we don't have a core curriculum. There are no general education requirements. We call it an individually advised curriculum because the idea, the sort of approach to education that Grinnell holds really dear is that every student gets to make their own choices and have a ton of freedom and flexibility, but you are always sort of constantly supported and guided by your faculty advisor. So that close working relationship between every student and their faculty advisor is the hallmark of a Grinnell education. Thanks so much, everybody.
Everyone, my name is Michelle. I'm here with Occidental College in Los Angeles. So if you're familiar with the city of LA, we're in Northeast Los Angeles between Pasadena and Glendale. Like you'll hear from my other colleagues, all of our schools are pretty small. It is one of the keystones of the liberal arts education. And if we could go to the next slide. I wanted to highlight 3 different kind of points about the college. So there are, of course, other incredible schools in Los Angeles, but we are the smallest. The other kind of notable schools are about 60,000 students big. And so you can tell that we are about 2,000 students. So it's very, very different in kind of the student experience. All of our students are required to do a senior thesis, a senior comprehensive project, we call it, to show mastery in an area of their choosing in their major. And then all of our students, one of our largest and longstanding traditions is called dance production. It's a completely student-run, student-performed dance show. About 10% of our students participate every year. So definitely a huge part of the OXI experience.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kathleen Abels. I am the Senior Associate Director and Director of International Admission at Haverford College, and I'm so grateful for your time. So thank you for joining us. Haverford is located right outside of the city of Philadelphia. We're part of a larger consortium, so our students are able to take classes of course, at Haverford, but also at Bryn Mawr College, Swarthmore College, and the University of Pennsylvania. So students take 32 classes to graduate and have over 5,000 opportunities to choose from. We are one of a handful of institutions, including Occidental, that guarantee undergraduate research to each and every one of our students. So all of our students have a senior thesis project, and that's just one way in highlighting really the value and importance of student voice on campus. One of the other common ways we do so is talking about Haverford's Honor Code, which is entirely student run and allows for a great deal of academic and social freedom and flexibility. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ryan Ricciardi. I am here representing Bowdoin College. Bowdoin is in Brunswick, Maine. All of you have heard of it, so I don't need to spend any time about our location. No, I'm kidding. Brunswick is a small town, but it is about 25 minutes north of Maine's largest city, which is Portland. Portland has an international airport, and it's about 2 hours north of Boston. Oftentimes when I travel internationally, I fly into Boston and I take the bus right to the corner of campus. It has Wi-Fi. Usually I take a nap, but it's super easy to get to, even as you think about where Maine is on the map. If we want to go to the next slide. A couple of things about Bowdoin. We are carbon neutral. So our commitment to thinking about our literal physical footprint on this world is really important to us, thinking about sustainability and the impact that has on the present and future of our institution and the world around us is a big part of our identity. We are a college that is known in some way, shape, or form for being the first ever test optional college. So we've been test optional since 1969. And I was reminded last summer that 1969 was the year that Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. So for 50 years, since the year that Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, we have been test optional. And then the last thing I'll highlight is our commitment to the common good. We were endowed and founded to be an institution that benefits the common good. And so thinking about using your education to leave the world better than you found it is a hallmark of your 4 years and your time beyond Bowdoin. And so we think about how we interact with people and how we go about our work. And it doesn't matter what you're passionate about, but that idea of making the world better, leaving it better than you found it because of that commitment you have to the common good is something that we all share. And if we want to go to the next slide, and I think that that's an important segue to thinking about how we all talk and think about the experience that you have with liberal arts colleges. This is a crazy world we live in normal circumstances, and these are far from normal circumstances. And so thinking about the ideas of connection and courage and bravery and empathy are probably values that resonate with you every day, but certainly right now. And they are values that you will hear us talk about as we talk about the lifespan of being a part of a liberal arts college community. I'm going to start by talking about the application process, right? This is the first part that you think about when you go into the idea of applying for college. And one of the things that I think you should definitely take away is that we all practice holistic review. So that means there's no test that you can ace or a certain score you can get to get you in to any of our schools, because you are more than any one part, right? You are the sum of lots of different parts. And so that idea of holistic admissions means that we don't practice threshold. There's no leap that you have to get over, no boundary. And it should be comforting knowing that we are thinking about all of the parts that make you who you are. One of the factors that we think about a lot are academics, right? We want to make sure that we are putting you in a position to succeed. And these are all academically rigorous institutions. And so we think about the potential you have to do well. And potential is a really key word. It's not about everything that you've done so far, because you are not yet a complete person. None of us are. It is about all of the things that you have in front of you. So we look at your transcript, right? And we think about taking the classes that you've taken and the rigorous choices that you've made. That doesn't mean that every single person has to have an AP curriculum or a certain set of AP classes. It doesn't mean that everybody has to be in an IB curriculum. We, as admissions officers, it's our job to understand with nuance where you're coming from. And so that means we are used to things like national curricula, AP curricula, IB curricula, and we look at the opportunities that you've had and how you've taken advantage of them. So that means if you're in a national curriculum, don't feel like you need to take 20 AP tests just to prove that you're ready for the US. We know you're ready. We're reading your transcript and we're seeing how you have achieved within the opportunities you've had. Another part of that academic factor are your recommendations, right? They tell us from a teacher's perspective how you interacted in the classroom. And that's going to be really important because you're going to be a part of a community that believes in your contributions to those classrooms. We read your essay. We think about how you write, but also what you're writing, right? This is your opportunity, your essay, to have a voice in the process. You are speaking directly to me when you write your essay. I am reading it word for word, and I am getting to know you. So I'm thinking of an example from this year, one of my favorite essays from Abu Dhabi, a guy who wrote about his connection to coffee culture. First of all, totally fascinating to me as someone who loves coffee to think about what coffee means in the culture of Abu Dhabi and of the UAE and of the Middle East, even bigger than that, but also to think about how he engages with culture, right? And then how he's going to have conversations about different parts of culture when he comes to Bowdoin. And so that essay is really an opportunity not to show me all of who you are, but to show me a little bit about what makes you, you, right? A little slice of what's important to you. So that's an opportunity to speak with me through your essay, right? Through your writing. But there are literal voices you can have in this process as well. And those are interviews. We all accept interviews. We all highly recommend them. Initial View is a wonderful opportunity to send us your interview. I'm thinking of an interview from Mumbai where I learned about a young woman who was really passionate about her English theater curriculum and then animals. And she combined those two things by starting a local newspaper that talked about the different animal shelters in Mumbai. And she sent it out and she fundraised for those shelters through that combination of thinking about the things that she was passionate about, right? So you could have an initial view interview and send that to us. You could have an on-campus interview if we ever get back to life in person. But if you can't, right, we all offer virtual opportunities through Skype. If we ever travel again, we offer interviews when we travel. We have alums who offer interviews. So these are wide open opportunities to just tell us a little bit more about who you are as a person. It's really about thinking about that humanity, right? Those values that we talked about, that I talked about at the beginning, that idea of empathy and courage and connection, those things that are going to make you a vibrant member of our community, make those connections that you're going to have with people from all over the world. And we get to see that in your interview. One thing that I haven't really talked about is testing, and that's really intentional. It's super scary to have all of these test dates canceled, right? They've been canceled now for the past, 4 months. They're canceled for the foreseeable future. They're planning maybe some in September, but who knows if we'll be able to gather in groups again at that point and how that will work where you are. And so we want you to know that we know how to handle that, right? This takes nuance and understanding and connection with people to really know that you are not a test score. You are not a number. And so even if you sit there and say, this test is great, right? I've done such a great job on it. I bet you've never gone to a new person and said, hi, I'm 1550. Because that's not the first and most important thing about you. Your test score is a number. And if it's part of your application, that's fine, but it is the least interesting, least revealing piece of information that we have about you. So those values that like I've referenced in this, I think are really important to us, but they should also be important to you. They are values that belong in your college search. They're values that you want to live when you're in college, and they are big parts of that campus life that you're going to experience, because the application is just the start of everything that comes next. And so to sort of transition a little and talk about the more exciting pieces of what comes next, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Tina.
Thanks so much, Ryan. And thanks for doing such a beautiful job talking about what all of our institutions really value and why we go through a holistic application process. And it really is because we are not just looking for a test score or the person with the strongest grades, right? We're looking for a whole individual, because when you come to our campuses, you bring more than just a series of achievements, right? It really is about how you're going to contribute to our communities. And I really think of the work of admission officers as the work of crafting community. That is what we get to do. We get the great good luck every year to choose students who we think will come to our campuses and change them and really become a part of them by being really involved. And so I think about this as being really important to the liberal arts approach to education, right? Yes, we absolutely want to educate all of our students in a number of different ways, but we also want to be educated by our students to really benefit from the presence of all of you on our campuses. So when I think about the approach that all of our schools take to educating students, particularly, I'm talking about the first 2 years that you're in school, right? So likely before you've declared a major at all of our institutions, you have 2 years before you have to do that. So what do you do those first 2 years? How are you educated? How do you contribute? And a big part of this, right, is that the liberal arts approach to education is about both breadth and depth. So we want you to have the opportunity to explore broadly across disciplines and divisions, but to also ultimately get real depth, particularly in your major. And I think all schools have different approaches to this. As I mentioned earlier, Grinnell takes the approach of an open curriculum. So we don't want to tell you what electives to take to get that breadth. We want you to be able to choose how you want to experience a variety of different disciplines. But other schools have an approach where you're required to take certain classes in certain areas to get that breadth. And that's a really important part of what we do. But another important part, right, is to think about not just what you're learning in the classroom, though that is very important, but also how you learn to be a full participant in our communities. And that is absolutely academic, but it also has to do with how you choose to spend your time outside of the classroom. And all of our schools, of course, have orientation programs for all of our first-year students, but many of us also have pre-orientation programs where you bring students to campus, first-year students, even before orientation begins, whether it's for our international population who, of course, experience life in the U.S. a little bit differently, or for other groups of students. And this is a really good way for students to get involved and to learn about the community in a kind of low-stakes, risk-free environment, right? So you get to know the campus, know the larger community. I think that's important in Grinnell, but it's also really important in a city like Los Angeles. And then we also want to help our students learn how to be successful in our liberal arts college classrooms, right? So all of our schools have students from around the US and around the world. Everyone is absolutely qualified to be at our different institutions, but everyone's been prepared for our institutions very, very differently. So when I think about Grinnell and you've got a student from Nebraska sitting in class next to a student from Nepal, I guarantee their high school experiences have been wildly different. And so all of our schools have some sort of first-year class. At Grinnell, we call it a tutorial. Other schools have a first-year seminar. This is a class just for first-year students. It's usually even smaller than our average class, right? So Grinnell's average class size is 17. Our tutorial might have 11 or 12 students in it. And at Grinnell, the professor of your first year tutorial is your first academic advisor who will help to sort of advise you as you choose your courses until you declare your major. But at every liberal arts college, the professor of your first year class is someone who takes a deep interest in the early part of your college education and really helps you learn to explore across the curriculum. So I've got a favorite student, Aho, and he comes to Grinnell from Kolkata, and I love him because he's the host student of my neighbors. So he lives on campus, campus, but he spends a lot of time over in my neighborhood. And he came to Grinnell knowing he wanted to study theater, but through the classes that he took in his first 2 years and the encouragement of his advisor, he took psychology classes, early childhood education classes, English classes. I mean, he's ended up being an English and theater double major with a technology studies concentration. And he spent a lot of time working in the sort of child psychology laboratory daycare that we have here on campus, sort of really thinking about how to educate young children, which is an interest he didn't know he had when he arrived at Grinnell. And it's made him a really important part of the community, not just on stage, which of course is his great love, but in getting to know lots of children in the community and really discovering a love and passion for education. Another really important part of your first couple of years at any liberal arts college is really going to be learning how to be successful once you've declared your major and you really dive into research, to really getting expertise in the area that you're most excited about. And those resources that you'll need, right, are certainly how to speak to and learn from your professors, but also how to navigate all of the opportunities available to you in terms of career development, as well as learning to be a good community member, right? So as much happens in the dorms, in residence life on our campuses as in the classroom. And that is such a big part of the experience at our colleges, as well as learning how to take advantage of every opportunity available to you, whether for a home, it's, you know, being active with theater, but also writing for the school newspaper. All of these different ways that you contribute to our campuses really matter. And that's such a big part of what we want our students to gain out of their first 2 years at our colleges, is both what do you think you might want to study, but also how do you experience all of the other opportunities that are available to you. And once you sort of have that, then you're prepared to dive in, to take that deep dive into your major. And I know Michelle's going to talk a little bit more about that now.
Awesome. Thank you, Tina. And so I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of context as well. You saw all the numbers that we kind of highlighted about our student body, class sizes, and things like that. And so you'll notice that all of us are pretty small. All of us are about 2,000 or smaller than 2,000. So that's a really intentional choice. Vast majority of those 2,000 students are also undergraduate. We have very, very few, if any, master's or PhD programs on our campus. And again, so that means literally every single person you see on our campuses are hired to support and to help our students during their time getting their bachelor's degrees. So when you're thinking about having your full professors, we don't have students teaching classes, we have professors teaching classes. When you're having these professors teach your classes in our very, very small, intimate class sizes, you get to know them quite well. When you're applying to, I should also mention, when you're applying to a liberal arts college, you're also applying to the institution, you're not applying to a major. So you're developing these relationships, you're building this kind of broad foundation of your studies and your academia and your interests, and you're able to kind of have relationships and mentorships that are really going to be longstanding. Our professors are also still academics. They still want to be super involved with their field. And so it means that they are going to look to the students in their classes for support in the lab, for support out in their field work. And so that means that you'll be doing some meaningful and really incredible work. And so as cool as it is for me to kind of talk broadly about it, I wanted to go to the next slide and talk a little bit about an international student. So Jade came to Oxy from the UK. And so when she actually applied to Occidental, she applied as a critical theory and social justice major, which is basically studying kind of systems of oppression, power structures, things like that. I should also mention that research is going to be a key part of any an experience at any of our institutions at any liberal arts college. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Jay, but you're going to find a similar story across our fields. But she took classes in Asian American literature and history, and a lot of classes in biology, of course, because that's her major. And in her small kind of classes, she actually found a mentor in Shanna Gofretti, who her specialty is looking at the mutualistic symbiotic relationship, but it specifically deep sea vents between bacteria and sponges. And so you can tell that, Jade spent 2 years kind of working at deep sea vents, going on scuba diving trips, going on snorkeling trips, collecting specimens, bringing back to the lab. And she was actually able to leverage that into, a fellowship at the Smithsonian Tropical Research. And this is going to be key across all of our college campuses as well. There's going to be substantial funding, not just like kind of support, emotional support, kind of academic support, but there'll actually be monetary support for you to conduct this really high level research. And so she, combined with her Smithsonian grant, it was about $15,000 to do independent research. So research that she was doing fully by herself. And she was able to kind of present at different conferences. She is kind of the owner of this research. And so that's helping her as she's looking at different PhD programs after graduation. And this, like I mentioned, is going to be a very, very common theme of what you're going to hear. But how does kind of the experience at a liberal arts college, you're kind of getting in depth and getting that kind of tangible hands-on, putting theory to practice experience, how does that look into postgraduate work? And so I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen to talk a little bit about that.
Great. Thanks so much, Michelle. And thanks to Tina and Ryan too. You know, I think in a lot of ways, it's clear we're thinking about scaffolding for who you'll be, not just at our institutions, but who you'll be as a citizen of our world, right? Someone who's interested in shaping, changing, and challenging the communities you're part of to be better. And so much of what we've talked about so far is really the value and impact and power of relationships. We see the biggest resource we give our students as the importance and value of strong relationships, not just for your 4 years on our campus, but truly for the rest of your life, right? I think a lot about the value of faculty relationships. Over 70% of students on each of our campuses within 5 years of graduation will go on to graduate school, and not just any graduate school, some of the top graduate schools in the United States and across the globe. And they're doing that because of the strength of their educational experience on our campuses, but also because of the strength of the mentorship they've received within our faculty. Our faculty are writing letters of recommendation, they know them well. And a faculty member said recently to me, when a student shares her goal, that goal then becomes that faculty member's goal too. And I think that really tells you the depth and importance of relationships, not just for students, but for faculty too. They've very intentionally chosen to teach at a liberal arts and sciences college because they're interested in cultivating these kinds of meaningful academic relationships with their students. We also think that this importance of being at a liberal arts college and having the strength of those faculty relationships means that you're ready to take risks. You know that sometimes failing is part of the process, and you're able to get back up and try something new and try something different. And if we think about where our world is right now, right, there is not one easy pathway to thinking about how we stop the spread of COVID-19. There are many different approaches that are important and necessary, and there's not just one discipline that is leading those conversations, right? And so this sort of breadth of educational experience is a really essential piece of relationship building. We also, of course, have really wonderful centers on our campus to support our students in finding the kinds of questions that they want to answer after college. So we have centers where people are working with international students to make sure you understand all of the wonderful opportunities available for you. And well over 90% of students on our campuses are taking advantage of this center. It also means that there are hundreds of employers who are coming to our campuses to recruit our students because they see the values and the power that they bring to the communities that they're a part of as well. We have really strong alumni networks too. And one of the really exciting pieces of all of our jobs, since we get to travel in more normal circumstances across the globe, is not only meeting with you as prospective students, but getting the chance to connect with alumni. We have global alumni networks, and our alums are at the top of their field academically, and also in terms of different industries too. And what's, I think, really important is that 90% of students within 6 months of graduation are either fully employed, they're in graduate school, or they're doing a year-long fellowship. And so while that sort of strength of relationship allows you to feel like you've been pushed and challenged, it also means that there are other institutions, there are other organizations that recognize the strength of those relationships too. So I want you to take a moment and think, okay, I've learned a lot about liberal arts colleges, right, in this last half an hour. What do you think the most common industry that a liberal arts graduate might go in? Perhaps you viewed a quick sneak peek, but if you didn't, I would be surprised if many or any of you thought business, right? these are statistics that are specific to Haverford, but they're not very different across our institutions. We don't offer, none of us offer a business major, right? And so what this makes clear is that you don't major in your career. You major in something you love and your career follows. As Michelle and Tina talked about, right? You are not applying to a specific major. So you are not defined by your major when you're on our campus, and you are not limited by your major once you graduate. We think that students who have a liberal arts education are able to tackle some of our world's most challenging questions because you've not been taught to solve a problem in one way, but instead in many. You're not qualified for just one job, you're qualified for many. And that is really the value of choosing to go to a place like any of our institutions. What I'd like to share is the story of a Haverford alum. Her name is Shruti. She graduated in 2006. She is from Bangalore. She spent most of her life in Bangalore, but also spent a few years in New York City. And she majored in chemistry and minored in philosophy at Haverford. After she graduated, she worked in New York City for Merrill Lynch for a few years and then realized that that was not what she wanted to do at all. So she went back home to Bangalore. She started 2 different restaurants, recognized how challenging that was, but really loved the field of hospitality. She then continued to work on those 2 restaurants, went to Columbia Business School to get her MBA, and is now part of a sort of global international development organization. She has been featured on many 40 under 40 in terms of young entrepreneurs, both in India, but across the globe. And what I love about this story is that she's also someone who's on the World Economic Forum board too. So she's thinking about development in really thoughtful ways, not just, okay, how do we, build an exciting sort of space for people to visit, but what does that mean in terms of how do we shape and change what people call home too? And we think that being part of this kind of liberal arts experience at any of the institutions we represent will allow you to think about the decisions you make and how they shape and impact the communities around you. And you can do that, right? Majoring in chemistry. You can be a leader in the hospitality field internationally as a chemistry major. What she learned didn't tell her the answers to the issues that she's coming across. Instead, it gave her the sort of framework to think about how do we solve problems. And what I hope is clear is that this conversational is personal for all of us, right? We're all really proud liberal arts college graduates and really interested in hearing what questions are on your mind too. So I want to thank Gloria and Initial View for hosting us and giving us this forum, but also want to take the time to really transition from our part of the presentation to yours. So please share what questions are on your mind. Let us know how we can be helpful. And thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Kathleen and Michelle, Tina, and Ryan as well. And this presentation is always near and dear to my heart because I am also a liberal arts graduate. So I loved my experience during college, but I also see all the value. I think that, the stories that were shared today were very familiar in going into college with certain interests, finding new interests as you're in college, and then even beyond, having learned how to learn, basically. And that's the world that we're in today, where we're learning how to learn. And we're needing to kind of pull in so many different disciplines to be able to solve problems. And so thank you again so much for this time. So we do have some questions, and I encourage people who are still thinking about it to go ahead and put your questions out there. And just to kind of like take a little step back here and talk about liberal arts, I think some people are asking the question of, can you design your own major? It sounds like you can do so much at a liberal arts college. Is designing a major a possibility?
Yeah, I can take that one. So I think that at all of our institutions, likely there is the option to design your own major. I know particularly, I can speak for Grinnell, there are students who will design their own major every year, but I would say it's never more than 5% of any graduating class is chosen for an independent major. The vast majority of students will choose a major or multiple majors from within sort of pre-existing departments. At Grinnell, there's a pretty rigorous process if you want to design your own major of proposing the different disciplines that you're going to use. Rather than one major advisor, you would have to have at least two. And I can see from the nodding heads that it's probably a pretty similar process at all of our institutions. And I think what we all ask, I think that one requirement of every liberal arts college is a level of thoughtfulness and intention as you go through your 4 years. And so that would be true for those who want to design their own major as well, right? Is that the best way to get the experience that you want? For some students, the answer will be yes. For others, it might be no, you can get the education you want by declaring a pre-existing major, but then focusing your undergraduate research on a very particular topic. Or it might be that the electives that you choose to build your curriculum sort of fulfill the need for the education that you want. And so for any student who is thinking about designing their own major, there's going to be a pretty rigorous process to thinking through what that looks like for you. But I would say that yes, it is absolutely a possibility.
I just wanted to add, I thought that was absolutely perfect. I also wanted to add that we all offer flexibility within the things that we offer already as well, right? So it isn't just that you're confined to a major. You could have two majors, you could major minor, you could have two majors and a minor, right? There are lots of different ways to combine what exists already on our campuses. And so it's not, when you think about a major, you think about a topic, right? But think big, because that's what we're going to ask you to do when you're here, and think small because we're going to ask you to really, as Tina said, reflect on what's important to you, what you're passionate about, and what are those specific questions within the broader context of the flexibility that we all offer that you really want to drill down into. And so there are two different ways to think, right? Think big and think small as you're thinking about all of your options. But that idea of flexibility is a hallmark of all of the opportunities that you have on a liberal arts college campus, academically and personally, right? And so to Tina's point, it really is about taking what you want and taking what we offer and seeing how that fits together. And all of our faculty, all of the resources of our schools are there to support you in that discovery process.
Wonderful, thank you. And in the vein of kind of academics and the majors that are offered, Kathleen mentioned, that business is like a career track, even though that's not a major. But are there things like engineering, for example, that you can do at a liberal arts college, and maybe highlight a little bit of the differences between studying maybe a STEM field, for example, at a liberal arts college versus at a larger institution, what research looks like at a liberal arts college?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really glad that student asked that question, or the counselor, because I think oftentimes, and even in this presentation, right, we've said liberal arts, but that's actually a shortening for the name liberal arts and sciences. So I just want to take this moment before answering more directly to highlight the strength of the sciences at all of our institutions, right? We believe in that kind of critical inquiry across fields. And that's, I think, one of the ways in which going to a liberal arts college and being interested in sciences will give you a lot of prioritization in other stages of your grad school application process, or in applying to jobs right after graduation as well. Because as my colleagues mentioned earlier, there are no graduate students on our campus, and we have faculty who are at the top of their field. And in order to remain at the top of their field, and because they're passionate of their, on their topic, they're continuing to do their research. And so when they're hoping for a research assistant they're looking at you as a first year, second year, third year, senior on our campus, right? And so that's a really important aspect to highlight. At large research universities, there are sort of several layers of people between a professor and an undergraduate student. And at a liberal arts college, that's just not the case. That's certainly true in the social sciences and the humanities, but I want to highlight that especially in terms of being brave and choosing to go to a liberal arts college with an interest in the natural sciences. In terms of engineering, we all have programs that would allow students to get a dual sort of degree within the field of engineering. There are definitely liberal arts colleges that offer an engineering major, so that's more less common, but there are tons of liberal arts graduates who go on to get their masters in engineering. And so just like, you know, the example I shared, student didn't major in hospitality, right? There are tons of liberal arts graduates who are working in the field of engineering.
Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about the admissions process and in light of COVID. So first, there's a question about A-levels and how you all look at them and if the credits can be transferred. And so I'll start with that one.
Yeah, I can take that one. So absolutely, like Ryan mentioned, we are very comfortable with different types of educational systems across the world. So if that means you're in the national curriculum, A-level, AP, IB, if you're in something else, we are probably have seen it before. And you won't be the only person applying in our cohort with your type of education style. So yes, we all are comfortable with A-level. We all, I would expect, have some policy of kind of allowing your credit to transfer in various ways, because we do want to acknowledge that kind of the A-level is a really rigorous process. But yes, absolutely, we're comfortable with it, we know it, and we can definitely work with you.
And there are definitely students and families that are concerned about what's going to happen in the fall, obviously. And so where should students find information about kind of updates? I know that we will send a follow-up as well with the pertinent links, but you know, just kind of on a practical level, how should people be looking for these updates? That's question number one. And then the question number two is, as people are thinking about the fall, there's definitely a question about gap years and deferral. So can you maybe walk us through a little bit of what that process might look like if you were considering to defer, and how you think that might impact admissions as a whole? Sorry, that was a lot of questions all at once.
Yeah, I'll start, and everybody can jump in. They're big questions, right? And they're big for a reason, because there are big things going on. The simple answer is that all of us have websites, and all of us want to keep you as updated and as informed as possible. We're not trying to hide anything. So you can Google Bowdoin COVID-19 and you'll find it's like bowdoin.edu/COVID-19. Like, that's our website, right? And you can find all the information that we've put out there. I'm sure that's similar for all of my colleagues and their institutions as well. It really, part of the reason that we're doing these presentations, right, and part of the reason that we're working to meet you virtually is because our world has changed, but that doesn't change the fact that we are not trying to put anything behind a curtain. We are trying to show you who we are and what we're all about, and COVID-19 doesn't change that. The answers we don't have yet. I'm guessing at each of my colleagues' institutions that they haven't come out with a plan for the fall yet either, whether we're going to be on campus or virtual. If we're on campus, what that looks like, whether we'll have semesters that look differently, or whether we'll go to a trimester system, or whether some of your classes will be virtual and some will be in person. There are so many permutations of how to solve really big questions, right? And we just don't have the answers yet. But when we do, they will be on those websites. So that would be the first place to look for sort of updated information. In terms of gap years and deferrals, whether that's related to COVID-19 or not, I'm going to treat it as a separate question. Gap years and deferrals, we absolutely allow them. There are all sorts of reasons that people want or need to take them, right? I just had one come in this morning from UAE because they now have a new policy about a mandatory 4-month military service upon high school graduation. So that's going to impact this student's arrival on campus. So of course we'll grant them for a military reason, for a religious reason, and for really any plan that you can come up with short of sitting on your couch for a year, right? Often when you take a gap year, you come to college more focused with a broader worldview, with a different set of expectations for yourself and for your experience. And that only enriches the campus experience for all of those around you. So by and large, gap years, deferrals, they bring really great things to you, but also selfishly to us, because they make us better for your broader viewpoint of the world around you.
I think Ryan did a really great job with that. I just have sort of two quick pieces to highlight. And the first is that we talked a lot about sort of the importance of empathy, right? And one of the reasons we're doing this presentation as a group of 5 people, but also the institutions and organizations we represent, is really meeting you where you're at, and understanding what is best next step for you, right? And so this is always going to be a conversation, whether students are interested in taking gap years for whatever reason besides sitting on the couch, as Ryan articulated. So I think this is a great way to point out sort of the approach to learning, but the approach that we take as educators in terms of really being interested in fostering conversation and making sure you're in a place where you can really thrive on our campus. I think the other sort of thing to think about in terms of communication and sort of the way in which the media can be hyperbolic at times. I feel like every morning I wake up and there's a news alert on my phone and it just says like, college is closed for the fall. And it's that one college has announced that they're, offering online courses, and there has been this sort of sweeping generalization. And so I know I always sort of wake to a start in that case, but I know it can be hard to sort of dig below the headline, but just want to sort of push you as students who are thinking about liberal arts educations, that you're going to be asked to push below the headline. And here is a great way to take that opportunity and see this as a learning moment, and not sort of fall into those broad sweeping generalizations that sometimes headlines can sort of make us think.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, I would love to shift gears a little bit about, to be a little bit more hopeful when we are able to come to your campuses, when we are able to be on your campuses, what types of things, talk a little bit about what there is to do for fun at a liberal arts college. I mean, each of you are kind of in a different area of the United States, and, not so, aside from Occidental, we're not in a big city. And so what are some of the things that you can do for fun?
So the thing that I always tell students, right, because I think that's such a great question for all of our schools, I think it is maybe when students think about coming to rural Iowa, it's definitely like what is there to do there? And I think the most important thing, right, and on some level, I think a lot of liberal arts colleges forget to say this because it's so, for us, it's so assumed, right, which is the thing that most students do for fun all of the time is to be with each other. You will make the best friends of your life in college, right? And I think one of the primary places that I do my recruiting is in New York City. And I think about the high school students I work with who, you know, they'll go to school in one of the 5 city boroughs and their best friends will be scattered all over the city. And it can be an hour-and-a-half subway ride to see their friends on a weekend. And I think at Grinnell, your friends are never farther than an 8-minute walk away from you at any given moment. And I don't think that's something to take for granted, right? That you get to live with the people that you love the most and find the most fun, and they're always there. And there's no commute to get to any of them. So I think that's really important, that the sort of foundation for fun at most of our institutions is the people that you're with. And that is such a huge part of the college experience. But then I think all of our schools, right, of course, Oxy, Haverford have access to these major American cities really close by. And I actually think Portland, Maine, where Bowdoin is close to, is also a really amazing place. But I think so much of what's happening at all of our schools is on campus. And at Grinnell, everything that happens is free. Everyone can attend everything, whether it's a party or a performance or whatever it might be. And that's happening pretty much all of the time. And all of it is super easy to access. So I think one of the great things about our institutions is we make it happen on campus. And so you are with people you love, you can do anything you want, and none of it is going to be farther than a few-minute walk away. So.
Wonderful. And so when we think about kind of what your schools are like, in admissions is 2 ways, right? You know, I think a lot of times students are like, what are you looking for? And we want to encourage people to be saying, well, what are you looking for as well? But the question is, what type of student thrives at a liberal arts college? What type of student really does well in this type of setting? Anyone want to take a crack? I think the question is, I think the answer is actually quite diverse.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start us off, and certainly if anyone has differing opinions, please, sorry, I think my neighbor is moving some trash cans out to the street. Hopefully you'll hear that. I think what the types of students that I think do really well, I think there are kind of some overarching themes at liberal arts colleges, and then will of course be a little bit different. But Kathleen mentioned in a different presentation that we're going to be highlighting degrees of difference, like just kind of very, very small amounts of what an Oxy, education and kind of social experience will look like compared to kind of Grinnell, Bowdoin, Haverford. So I think overall, though, liberal arts college students tend to be interested in kind of the interdisciplinary work, studying kind of things outside of their kind of narrow, maybe academic interests. They want to explore, they want to kind of be very nimble academically and look across different disciplines. And I think one of the things that a constant theme for us has been that liberal arts college students are also empathetic and they're also brave. Because often when it's really hard to know that you are studying for and like understanding and learning how to learn and not maybe learning, business to be able to kind of directly translate that into a job. And so I think students who are interested in liberal arts colleges have kind of faith in this process, have faith in kind of themselves and understanding that they're going to trust their mind, they're going to trust their kind of learning style, they're going to be able to kind of put faith in that. And I know that's a really, really scary thing. And it's especially horrifying if you're 17 and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't exactly, especially, map out what my future might look like. But it's kind of putting faith in the process and understanding that you're going to be totally fine. You're going to be very happy. And your life is going to take you in a lot of different unexpected places, but you're going to be totally, totally okay, even if it doesn't feel like that right now.
Yeah, I love that answer, and I'll add on to it that I think one of the great pieces about applying to college is that there are lots and lots of places that you'll thrive, right? If you have narrowed your focus down to liberal arts colleges, then you know that you're going to thrive at places that are built around a strong community, a central community, right? You're going to thrive at a place that's highly residential, where your social life and your academic life are focused in the same place. You're going to thrive at a place where you can't be anonymous, where you are going to be known on our campus and where you're going to make a difference. Similar to Michelle, my dog is sleeping next to me and is having a dream right now. My apologies. These are Zoom webinars. This is the but the point of all of that, right, is that those are qualities that we all share, which means if you've highlighted those as meaningful to you, you'll find a lot of different places that fulfill those pieces, and they're going to fill them in different ways, but that's okay, because it means you get to explore different parts of who you are. So being open-minded on our campuses really matters, but it really matters in the application process too, and really thinking outside the box. Maybe you've grown up in Manhattan and you think, I need a city the size of Manhattan or I'll be bored. But maybe if you talk to students from Manhattan who go to institutions in more rural places, you'll find that actually they're thriving there, right? And so being open-minded as a community member is important, but being open-minded for yourself and being self-reflective about the pieces that interest you, that you sort of anchor on, and then where those allow you to find different versions of yourself. And there are going to be so many out there. So I would just encourage all of you not to get fixated on one school, one place, and one way to do it, because there are lots and lots of ways to really thrive in college and really be the best version of yourself.
I like how you all have been talking about trusting the process. And as I know, just from doing a lot of these Tuesday talks, a lot of students and families will ask the question, what do you look for? What do you look for in an essay? What do you look for in letters of recommendation? And, the answers that we've been getting are a lot about this two-way street. It's not necessarily one particular thing from an essay that's going to be the thing that gets you in. That being said, I will just put it out there. When you are, it's a question about holistic review. Like when you are looking at the essays and the letters of recommendations, what are you hoping to get out of that?
Go for it. Oh, sorry. Well, I can start. I think the beauty of our job as admission officers, especially admission officers who work for small liberal arts colleges, where we have the luxury of time compared to other places, we get to read your application from start to finish, and we get to open your application up and say, what is the student trying to tell me? So that's really the starting place, right? We think about what you've chosen to share with us. And while this might sound like kind of a fuzzy response, the best applications we read and we feel like we just had a conversation with you. It's really fun and this is like me getting really nerdy and excited about this, but it's really fun to read an application where, you hear what the student has chosen to write about in their essay, and you say, okay, the student really likes to ask hard questions. And then you, go through the process of reading the application, you get to those teacher letters, and it's clear that, yeah, the person who came through in that essay is the person who shows up in those classes. And so it doesn't need to be asking hard questions. That's just one example, but to see sort of a thread, the continuity throughout your application, the authenticity that clearly each piece of that application is a reflection of you and really truly who you are, not who you think we want you to be. And I know that can be really hard when you're thinking about an end goal. I want to get into X, so I need to be this. But in actuality, you being your honest self and bringing that to your application, in your essay, in your interviews, in your supplemental responses, all of those aspects will give us a sense of who you are. And that is the person that when we get to our admission committee, we're so excited to advocate for, because we have all of these ways of highlighting who you are and who you'll be on our campus.
So I think Kat does such a nice job bringing together what Ryan started with, and I love that there's sort of a full circle element to that. What I just wanted to add was I really think that in particular, the essays and the letters of recommendation as two distinct components of the application, what they really do is they add depth and substance to your accomplishments, right? I think so much of what is provided in an application is a series of accomplishments and achievements, whether that's your grades, whether it's honors and awards, whether it's your list of extracurricular activities. And that's wonderful. Those are very important. And all students, I think, should be proud of what they've achieved over the course of high school. But again, to bring it back to how Ryan started us off talking about what we look for and why that's important in our communities is we are not admitting the people who are necessarily just the most accomplished or have the highest test score or have done, you know, the best grades. We are admitting whole people, and your essay and what your teachers have to say about you give real depth and texture and create that authenticity, right? They really allow us to get to know you and what you will bring to our campuses outside of the classroom, how you will interact with each other, how you treat other people, how you choose to live in community. And those are, I think, elements that we can best see in the essay and the letters of recommendation.
Thank you so much. And unfortunately, we're running out of time and we've come to the close of our time together, but this has been such a wonderful time to hear from you and to learn a little bit more about liberal arts and the whole process of finding the best school for you. And I think some of the questions that we did not get to cover, we will try to, on some level with a feedback email, give you more information. So much of what we're trying to do here is connect people. And so we have contact information up here. We encourage you that if your question wasn't answered, you come up with another kind of question, feel free to reach out to my wonderful colleagues. They are all just amazing. And the other thing is we will be sending you their websites. And I think now is the time to really kind of pour through the information that's available, because while you are self-reflecting and learning about yourself, you're also wanting to learn about the institutions that you're looking at and how you might fit in there. And I think you'll learn a lot by just going to their websites, really seeking out current students, alumni, people who will be able to give you a taste of what it's like. Because again, it is two ways. It's not just you putting yourself out there, but it is, you know, the colleges now are putting themselves out here too for you to learn about them and understand whether or not they're the best fit for you. So thank you again so much. As we close, I don't know if anybody else wants to give a closing remark. Well, we all are here for you. We know that it is a crazy time and we want to keep in touch. So please feel free to keep in touch and tune in same time next week. We're going to have another Tuesday talk and we're going to keep doing this for as long as we can, since we can't travel right now. So this will be a great time for us to learn from each other in this new format.
Well, and final thanks to Gloria for all you're doing. I think of Initial View as really an organization that continues conversations and connects people. And this is a wonderful example of that kind of opportunity and all that you stand for. So thank you for this opportunity to connect.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.